Hello. Another ship I've been meaning to revisit as I'm working my way towards the Colorado on my alt, since a lot of people want to see a Colorado commentary as well. So I figured I might as well make a New Mexico one on the way, since it's been a while since I made my last one. The New Mexico, much like all the other US battleships, of course relies extremely heavily on positioning. You want to be in the right place at the right time, and in general the way to achieve this on US battleships it is to make sure you're always fairly central towards the objective, and in general fairly central towards the actual fighting going on. In this case, of course, looking at the map, the most central place is B, but going straight to B is of course quite suicidal. So in this case I'm gonna go towards A, and hoping to secure A, I will head towards B. It's always good to have a basic game plan of what you intend to do. You can of course always change it, adapt it and so forth, but having this basic plan is quite useful. Now, in that way the New Mexico hasn't really changed at all since the old times. It's still a ship that it does have decent range, but the dispersion and the slow reload means trying to snipe in this ship is going to be quite frustrating, honestly. At mid-range or like mid to long range, it's still not as good as, for example, the Fuso. The Fuso truly shines when you get, let's say, 10 to 15 kilometers away, whereas I would say the New Mexico truly shines when you get even closer than that. I'd say anything under 12 and the New Mexico becomes extremely potent, because even though it has a slow reload, it's very tanky. It can take a huge amount of punishment. It's quite small, compact. It turns and is very easy, very agile, very good at dodging shells, and it's just a brawling little beast, unlike the Fuso. It's also quite hard to citadel in comparison to the Fuso. I mean, they can be citadel. Oh, hello. Royal Navy cruiser he's trying to set up. Now the thing with Royal Navy cruisers is, of course, they cannot do, well, any cruiser can't do this, but especially these things, they just explode. And as I was saying, so the addition of the Royal Navy cruisers is honestly just a buff to US battleships, because in general you want to push in and brawl anyway, and having these extremely squishy cruisers being added is just a buff in general. Nürnberger Force, that's another floating citadel. Poses very little threat to you. The biggest threat both the German cruisers and the Royal Navy cruisers have to you are their torpedoes, but if they get caught in situations like this one, like this dude is, well, it's just Citadel Fiesta all day. So these guys are really not much of a threat to you in general. I'm kind of slowed down behind this island to see if I could get some shots off in case they had something else hiding there. This is such a good position because I can shoot through the island, but I'm not spotted, which makes it very optimal for taking these pot shots. Okay, he's gonna burn down. So far the push into A is working quite well. Now you see why I pushed up this close with my battleships right from the start. I didn't have to rely on shoddy dispersion to make these shots. I simply pointed and clicked. Very simple. And the battleships, especially at these lower tiers, are such a massive powerhouse of pure firepower. They can just straight up overmatch almost any angle and just punish any cruisers extremely heavily. So if you push up and support your DDs and cruisers, you see my DD pushed in and my cruisers pushed in, so I'm of course joining them. Meanwhile, in the back you can see there's some battleships that are still sitting on the sea line and trying to do some sniping shenanigans, and just don't be that guy. Push up with your buddies. I mean, doing this alone is risky, but doing this with your team is in no way, there's no real risk involved. In fact, more than likely anyone shooting is going to be shooting at the cruisers, because everyone likes the free damage you could get from cruisers in a battleship, and with your DD scouting you're unlikely to be torped either, so I really don't understand why people don't do this more, why they don't push in and take advantage. Now, I mentioned my old game plan. Here's a common mistake that you often see people make. They cap A, and then they see people fleeing down into the enemy spawn. As you can see right there, you see on the minimap on the H line, these battleships are turning away and fleeing, and they decide to go chase them, as you can see this Mutsuka is doing. And you can see cruisers do, and you often see people go chase them, and that's something you should never ever do. If you're a fast ship, maybe like Russian DD can sail after them and just burn them to death and harass them and so forth. But you never want to do that on a US battleship. You're simply too slow. I mean, look at my speed, full speed, and I'm turning slightly, and I'm doing 18.9, 19 knots now. You are painfully slow. So going out of position is something you want to avoid at all costs. Try to keep yourself central to the battle at all costs, at all times. The enemy has obviously kept C, so that's probably where the majority of their forces are, and we have kept A, so the natural convergence point of where these two fleets are going to clash is going to be around B. So I'm going to obviously turn towards B. It will give me a chance to shoot at all these targets in the spawn, but at the same time I will be keeping myself central and focused. Someone said it's lost, which is a bit interesting, considering we have a point and ship advantage. I guess the two landers on our team decided that they wanted to go into sea with very little backup, and they didn't understand to disengage when the enemy zerged it. They just sat there and hoped magically they would survive, and they got killed, and then they said it's lost. Alright, focusing on the main part though, the Warspite versus New Mexico is a fairly comfortable matchup for you at close ranges. Because you can obviously wreck his armor quite hard. I mean, but he can do the same to you. At longer ranges, he'll do so much damage to you compared to the damage you do to him that he'll have an advantage. But if you close the distance, then the sheer amount of guns you have will simply overwhelm his damage, and you should be able to deal with him. Additionally, of course, we still have ships in our spawn, so he should end up being quite crossfired and quite focused here. Tempted to shoot at them both, but considering the New York wasn't moving at all, he made for an easier shot. But you can see, even at this distance, the dispersion is a real issue. There was 6 guns that shot and only 2 hit. And this is, of course, I think my old commentary with New Mexico was called Brawling with the Shotgun, and it kind of like emphasizes the fact that you have the stopping and punishing power of a shotgun, but because of your dispersion, at any sort of distance, it's very randomized. Of course, this new... Would I want to shoot the Warspite? I'm just angling towards him, honestly, and this New York is still giving me broadside. And you can actually citadel him quite easily if you aim for the waterline. And if a New York gives you that much broadside, then yep, there we go. That was what, the 25k volley or so, with 6 hits. But once again, 12 shells, 6 hits. As I said, shotgun, very much. Warspite is now giving me broadside, which is fantastic. You see, he doesn't even want to shoot at me, he's rather shooting at a cruiser behind me. And that's kind of what I mean, when you do this with a bunch of cruisers on your side, they'd rather shoot the cruisers than you. Because battleships know they can instantly delete them. No, not as much damage as I was hoping for. A couple bounces, couple overpens, but whatever, he should be going down now. I can already focus on the next target. Now, usually if a Fuso gives you this much broadside, you should be able to citadel him. Honestly, this guy's going too close. He's putting himself in a bad position. If you look at the minimap, you can see how much backup I have north of me. So pushing into this guy is in my advantage, whereas him pushing in is very much a disadvantage for him. Oh, I think I might have aimed just a bit too high, but no citadels, yeah. A couple of Urpens, but once again, only 6 shells hit, which is a bit... I mean, still 12k damage, and it's what, 9 minutes into the game, and I'm almost at 100k damage. So the pure damage you can do when you push in like this is, of course, one of the biggest strengths of the New Mexico, and it has always been one of the big strengths. You push in, and you let your armor, your heal, and your guns do the talking. The issue mostly with the New Mexico is that people try to snipe with it, people try to do this. Okay, that should have been... Well, that was just unlucky dispersion, honestly, that should have been a citadel. But still, 13k damage, I'll take it. And this Fuso is pretty much dead. There's an Emerald inside the cap, but, you know, Emerald doesn't really scare me at all, just like any Royal Navy doesn't scare me. I'm angled towards him, so I know he'll pretty much do nothing at all to me. The only risk is the torps, but considering he's on the other side of the island, that's not really a threat either. I mean, he's shooting some AP at me, but yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, but Royal Navy, like, it's... For a battleship, they are honestly such a joke, which is so sad. I mean, I guess that was part of the plan why they made them AP only, is so that battleship players could just laugh at them, which I consider a bit silly, but whatever. He's obviously melting away. I think, does he even have smoke? He tried to torp, but Yeah, he's just a free kill at this point. Obviously, my original... You saw how long it's taken me to execute my original plan, though, that I said to go to A and then to B. It's taken me 10 minutes just to get to B since the game started. And that kind of emphasizes how incredibly slow these ships are, especially when you fight on the way there, and how much speed they lose in turns and such. So you really get an idea of just 10 minutes to get from A to B in this ship. So you understand now if you start sailing away... now I Citadel the Fuso. Interesting. If you start sailing away into the enemy spawn, then it's going to take you such a long time to get back, and I feel people overestimate the speed on these ships. They think, well, the map is small, I'll make it there fairly soon, and they didn't really pay attention to the actual time it takes. The fact that it's taking me 11 minutes to make it all the way here is just insane, and gives you a very good idea of just how slow these things are and how important it is that this central positioning. I can keep firing it. You notice I've never been unable to fire at anyone. Ever since the game started, I have always, pretty much every time my guns have reloaded, I have been able to fire at the target. And that's one of the harder things when it comes to playing US battleships. Always keeping yourself central. Central in the way that, no, you're not rushing into the enemy suicidally, for example, like at the start rushing into B suicidally, but always keeping yourself in a central position where you can always dish out damage without ever being in a position like, oh shit, I can't shoot at anyone, they're all too far away, wait for me guys, I'm getting there, and then you blame the ship speed and you blame all sorts of things. Like, I've seen a lot of comments about people blaming the ship speed. Like, the battle is already over by the time I get there. That's such a very common complaint. They say that, well, the ship is so slow, the battle is already over by the time I got there. And that's never true. Because if you start sailing towards where the battle is going to happen, you're gonna take part in that entire battle from start to finish. But if you waste a lot of time, you do a lot of useless nonsense, you spend a lot of time sniping and then you go off chasing somebody, then of course the battle's already going to be over, but it's not because of the ship, it's because you failed to take into account the slowness of the ship and the lack of speed it had. And that's a very common failing, I feel. Yeah, this Fuso is probably dead. I was hoping to nail the Farragut, but I think well, he turned away, and of course, with Battleship this version it's always about iffy, but I think I shot a bit short. I think I need to take a bit of a bigger lead before that. Yeah, Fuso is dead, I'm not even going to waste a volley on him, I'm just angling straight at him. In situations like this, I don't fear him at all, he's going to shoot. Does no damage, of course, because angled against the Fuso, I can just laugh. Am I going to nail this Farragut? I did get a pen, but it did... I think I got a 0 damage pen or something. I don't really understand what happened, because a full penetration should have killed him at that point. But it looks like he survived. Well, the Mitsuki just need to shoot him. Mitsuki, all you need to do is shoot him like one volley with your guns. Use your guns. I think the Mitsuki tried to torp him, and now he's just sailing around. I think waiting for his torps to reload. Someone else is telling him to use guns as well. This Farragut is still not being shot at by this Mitsuki. Wow, a full HP Mitsuki just lost to 900 HP. Classic IGN DD, I say, and honestly, that is the most classic example of a Japanese DD ever. The refusal to, or misunderstanding of not... Even Fubukis and Shimokazes do that stuff. They don't understand to use their guns. They just sit there with their torps. They're aiming down their torps and waiting for them to reload. Anyway, the game ended. 147k damage, which is of course always nice on a New Mexico. Broke 2k XP, not that special, but then again, I'm a battleship, so you're rarely gonna get those massive XP bonuses. Anyway, let's move on to the build part. Now, seeing as I've already unlocked and bought the Colorado, I'll have to access it through here. Shouldn't matter though. Now, first upgrade I highly recommend is getting the first hull upgrade. You don't need a range upgrade because you will be using the range upgrade or range module, so you won't be needing the range upgrade. The hull though is the first module I highly recommend. It gives you 15% torpedo reduction HP, it gives you AA, it gives you rudder shift, all these things that you really need. So get the B hull first. You really want this for pushing in. You want this to be able to not be completely defenseless against carriers, and it's a huge boon. Afterwards, get the propulsion mod, it buffs you from 18.5 to 21. Neither speed sounds that special, but it's a pretty big deal for such a slow ship. The Sea Hull is mostly just AA, so it's really not that important. Personally, after this, I would get the range upgrade as your third upgrade, and then as the fourth, finally get the Sea Hull for that even more improved AA, where it goes from just decent to really, really good. And yeah, you can see you get a lot of additional ones. Now, consumable wise, of course, I recommend the premium repair. If you're going to use anything premium, use the repair. And then there's the heal, of course. I use all that one premium as well, but that's in no way mandatory. Main armaments mod 1 and artillery plotting room. This is why you don't need range upgrade, because you'll get 16% main battery firing range from this one. I like it on both the new mix and the Colorado. Damage control system 1 and 2 to reduce those fire and flooding chances and damages. Captain perks wise, basics of survivability, reduce them even further since it stacks with that one, so you really cut down on that fire damage significantly. Expert marksman for the turret traverse, and I prefer getting both superintendent and vigilance here. But if you, for example, have issues with carriers, then there's no reason why you can't skip one of them earlier and get AFT sooner. If you have issues being torqued by DDs, you can skip superintendent and just skip vigilance and get AFT earlier. I mean, there's some leeway here which one you choose. Now, I highly recommend getting AFT over manual AA on this guy, because whereas the manual AA is 64 damage, this 40mm bowforce actually offers such a huge amount of damage that increasing the range on these by 20%, as well as increasing, of course, these 127mm by 20%, is more valuable than just getting the manual AA buff on those big guns. So that is my New Mexico commentary, an updated one, that is. I hope you guys enjoyed.